Thanks, Peter. It's good to see so many of our colleagues here from other RELs. Believe we have some folks from higher education, from school districts and schools, from community organizations, and from the U.S. Department of Education. We're very happy to see you all here this afternoon. This is the second of 3 forums that REL Northeastern Islands has been sponsoring on key issues in the development and growth of research alliances. As Peter mentioned, our topic today is extending borders. We're going to be focusing on what we're doing to communicate our work to broader audiences than our alliance memberships and our partners. So let me just go over very quickly what our agenda looks like. We will be having, as Peter mentioned, a presentation from REL Mid-Atlantic with Teresa Duncan, the director of the REL Mid-Atlantic. Joining her will be Cindy Blitz, the Research Alliance lead, and Maria Salinas, who's the dissemination lead, and they will be available to answer questions during the question and answer period after their presentation. After that, we will have REL Northeastern Islands talking about some of the ways that they've been extending the borders of our alliances. And for that, we'll have Rebby Carey, who's our executive director, Peter Orn, who is our dissemination lead, and again, we will have a question and answer period to respond to any questions that you might have. After that, we'll have a moderated discussion. We'll do a short poll to see what other things you're doing, and we will be opening the lines to see what other suggestions you might have and what thoughts you have on that delicate balance between nurturing internally our alliances and then spreading the word to others. And we'll also be sharing additional examples from some of the other RELs. So if you have any examples that you want to share, make sure you put them into the chat room, and we'll be referring to them later on. Right now, you're all muted, but when we have the question and answer periods, we'll unmute everyone, and we ask that you just mute the phone yourself for the moment and raise your hand so that we can call on you, and then you can unmute the phone and pose your question. So just some thoughts about what is important in terms of the development of our research alliances. One of the things we've found in the development of our research alliances at Northeastern Islands is that developing these partnerships really requires some initial time when we're just really more insular and thinking internally about how do we create a sense of membership and ownership among our alliance members. We started out by having small core groups of key stakeholders to begin to set a research agenda that was really key to their needs and their interests, and only after having done that, then expanding it a bit more to others, a second tier of membership that would broaden the perspectives on the agenda and the reach of the alliance. But what we have found also is that it's especially important when we're bringing together stakeholders from across different states, districts, and organizations that had not previously worked with each other. It's important in terms of building the relationships of trust first within that membership group, creating an identity as a group, including developing shared norms around expectations of alliance members and of staff. And once we had formed our research agenda, a shared research agenda among this small core group of key stakeholders, then to begin thinking about how we brought the ideas, the research questions, the work that we were doing to a broader audience. So from that initial focus of a more inward look, we then moved to, and I like this idea of our homegrown farm stand here, where we are now thinking more and more about how we are sharing information beyond our alliances. So as the goals and the research agenda became solidified among our alliance members, we began to look outward, looking to see who else needed to be informed about the work that the alliance was doing, being able to share the fruits and vegetables, we should eat our vegetables, of our labors. It's a very important step to also to inform policymakers and other decision makers of the research that would help them feed people's curiosity about what's been going on in the alliances and to add to the field of education. That's one thing that many of our alliance members have really been concerned about, and that is to really contributing to the body of work on research that is relevant and useful to practitioners. And so this time that we have together will be focused on really hearing about some of the ideas about, around going beyond our immediate members to sharing not only the findings of our studies, but other work that we have been doing with a broader audience and a larger perspective. So as you're listening to the presentations, we'd like you to think about the following questions. What are some ways you know that you are at the tipping point between focusing inward and spreading the word? And what are the benefits of doing this, of sharing beyond findings from research reports and going beyond the membership of our alliances to a broader audience? So as you're hearing the presentation, add your thoughts and your questions to the chat room, and we will be addressing them as we go along. So at this time, I'd like to turn over to Teresa, who will be giving us some examples of what they have been doing at REL Mid-Atlantic. Teresa?
Thank you, MP. Hello, everybody. This is Teresa Duncan from REL Mid-Atlantic. My colleagues Cindy Blitz and Maria Salinas are also on the line, and so Cindy and Maria, please chime in as you wish. I will talk through the presentation, and then we'll take questions afterwards. So as all the RELs are doing, the majority of our work is focused within our research alliances, and we currently have 8 research alliances. They range from early childhood to post-secondary, covering topics that have bubbled up as priorities within the region. And we've always been pretty conscious of the fact that research alliances, although they do drive our work agenda and our work plans, are a relatively small group of stakeholders. And so within these research alliances, we probably range in number of members from, a handful to a couple of dozen at the most. And so despite the fact that these are, of course, state and district and regional leaders, it's a very select group. And so we have been conscious about reaching out beyond these alliances. And so for the past couple of years, we have held webinar series, particularly the Teacher Effectiveness and Ask an Expert webinar series. Those are intended to serve not just the region, but also, a national audience, and so those were very much intended to reach a broad audience beyond just our research alliance. We focused on teacher effectiveness because that is a concern nationally, and there are, and it's not just a topic; it's a field within that. Within teacher effectiveness. There are lots of different ways you can focus, and so I'll talk about some of the ways we've touched on teacher effectiveness in just a few minutes. So we've got webinar series, and we also have in-person events. And so all of these range from maybe 50 people who attend the webinar series to 1,000 people, which the Data Summit is expected to attract. And so these are intended to go beyond our research alliances. The in-person events tend to be more state and district specific just because they are in-person events. And as I said before, the webinar series are intended to reach a wider regional and national audience. And so let me touch base. Let me tell you a little bit about the Pennsylvania Department of Education Data Summit. So REL Mid-Atlantic got involved in the 2014 Data Summit this current year in a very serendipitous way. And so, and this is an illustration of how serendipity can develop into some very fruitful work. I accidentally was on the receiving end of an email among some of the PDE staffers who were concerned about the 2014 Data Summit. The logistics had not been ironed out. They didn't have enough presenters, and all of that was because the person who was leading the Data Summit had a medical emergency and was going to be out for 6 weeks. And so I saw that email and I thought, well, uh, that's not really intended for me, so I'm not going to say anything. And so I let that go by. But then I got a second email, which I don't know, maybe in a very motivated and selfish way, said, hey, this is a sign. I need to respond. And so I responded, and I said, well, I think I can help out. Given the focus of this conference, I think we can help you out. And so what the REL ended up doing was not only just supporting it logistically, but also um, doing a presentation, taking up one of the slots that was empty, and sharing information about our Longitudinal Data Use Research Alliance. And PDE was very grateful. I was getting hugs at that conference because it really was cutting it so short. I think I think that email that I got was probably 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the conference, and so that was about 600 people and a statewide event, and it was a very high-stakes thing. And given the focus of this data summit, where the attendees are all data directors of the hundreds of districts in Pennsylvania, as well as some administrators as well, we thought, hey, this would be a great thing to add to our Year 4 plan, and we have added that to our Year 4 plan, and the REL will be presenting at a couple of sessions. We're going to be holding a workshop on basic concepts, basic database concepts to help some of the more novice data directors understand how systems work and how to think through the various elements of the systems that they work within. And we're also going to be doing another a panel. Well, I don't know if we call it a panel, but it'll be a presentation showcasing how other states are using, in innovative ways, their statewide longitudinal data systems. And so we will be highlighting New Hampshire, and if we can figure out how to do it long distance and with the technology not failing us, we'd also like to bring in Hawaii, because Hawaii is doing some really interesting things with their SLDS. And so the Data Summit is, I think, a nice way of, is a good example of reaching out beyond our research alliances, because it's going to reach, in this year, probably 1,000 people. At least we're capping it at 1,000 people. And it really is very well aligned to the REL's mission of building data capacity in the interest of enhancing student achievement. And so the PDE Data Summit is a major event that we will be conducting next year. And to show you the power of word of mouth, or of districts hearing that, or states hearing that, oh, the REL can do that? I mean, I want that too. I talked about the PDE Data Summit at our governing board meeting at the end of September, and our DC representatives came up to me afterwards and said, we have this data summit that we do for teachers. And I said, I had not heard about this, and several of the other DC folks said, yeah, we hadn't heard about it either. And so, well, that's one thing we can help with, is to help broadcast this data summit more widely, and to also support and present at the DC Data Summit. So we are That's in the works. Nothing confirmed yet. This event doesn't take place until July, and so we will be discussing with our friends at OSSI, the Office of the State's School Superintendent, and that'll be another way of doing some beyond the Research Alliance outreach. Another in-person event that we have done is this research to practice. Sorry, I see R2P, and I keep on saying research to practice. It's research policy and practice. The two Ps are practice and policy. And we did this at the request of the School District of Philadelphia. They are our research partners. They serve on our principal effectiveness and teacher evaluation alliances. And in our various discussions at the beginning of this year, late last year, they were concerned about the fact that in Philadelphia, like many large urban districts, there's a lot of research that happens. A lot of people want to do research in Philadelphia. And while a lot of good work is happening, the folks at the Office of Research and Evaluation at Philly really felt like more could be done to move what those researchers are finding into the classroom. In other words, all this research may be going on and being published, but it's not translating into instruction and policy. And so what we did here was we convened about 200 researchers who work within Philadelphia, brought them together at this conference. We held the conference was organized around the district's the district-wide plan. And so this action plan, I'm sorry that you can't read this very well. It's a little bit blurry. But there are sessions A through G focus on different aspects of that action plan. And so we really were trying to bring together researchers who were working within each of these strands and trying to get them to work to talk with each other and with district representatives to really think through about how we can move the research that they're doing into making changes at the classroom and instructional level. And that was very successful. Philly has asked us to make this an annual event, and so we will be planning the 2015 Research Policy and Practice Conference very soon. And so those are the highlights of some of our big events. I mentioned our various webinar series here. And so our Teacher Effectiveness webinar series, we held 8 webinars in 2013. We've done 7 now, or is it 6? I don't remember whether we've completed a 7th one yet this year. But we'll do another. We will have done 8 by the end of 2014. And as I said before, teacher effectiveness is a huge field, and so the topics that we've covered within this webinar series range from using observations, student surveys to measure teacher effectiveness, to various means of making teachers more effective, whether it's through induction and, effective ways of using professional development, the induction period. We also talked about different specific, more instructional focused topics like students with disabilities, early childhood education, science education. So it covers a wide range of topics. And the Ask an Expert webinar series, that built off of the 2013 series, and it was a way of digging in a little deeper. We had people at the 2013 series saying, we'd really like to continue the conversation that we started here, and so we initiated this Ask an Expert webinar series to follow up, make it less of a sit and get kind of situation, and really have it more interactive. And so that is a sister a sister event to our teacher effectiveness series. And our other two webinar series that I wanted to touch on just quickly are root cause analysis and our data dashboards. So root cause analysis, this is actually something that grew out of um, my attending the Mid-Atlantic Equity Center conference, I think in 2013. And Ronnie Weinstein, who is a veteran principal at Montgomery County Schools in Maryland, gave this presentation for the MAC, and I thought, hey, this is a perfect topic to, to highlight, because it is a way of encouraging practitioners to use data in ways that are relevant to them and are uh, and root cause analysis is, I think, a phrase that is very familiar to a lot of practitioners, but they may not necessarily know how to do it. So this is really a very hands-on kind of webinar. We had our first webinar, I think, in April or May. It was very successful, and so we're repeating it again in November. It's root cause analysis, I think, is a bit of a misleading term because it makes it seem like it's like an impact analysis, but it really isn't. It's a very much a first step of looking at what data you have, what questions you can ask and answer through it. It's not intended to be a formal impact analysis, but I think it's a really good gateway kind of step to help practitioners start thinking about their data and really focus on the kinds of information that they have at their fingertips and how they can use it for their instruction. And finally, data dashboards is this is something that we have done for the last 2 years. Last year, our data dashboard series focused on, the intended audience was district data directors. And we found that we had in the audience a fair number of teachers. And so we thought, okay, well, let us tailor the 2014 series more towards teachers and make it, and so it's not, so the data sets that we use to draw from as examples are more classroom-based versus something that a district data director would have. And so this is intended to help practitioners create data dashboards using Word and Excel. And so those are programs that they have at their fingertips. They don't have to buy any new specialized programs. The features are familiar. And it's been a pretty successful series of webinars. So, one technical thing is we always had, challenges with addressing the needs of Mac users and PC users. And so we segregated the last two webinars so that the last one in September was for PC users, and the final webinar will be for Mac users. And so that is a quick overview of some of the things that we have been doing at REL Mid-Atlantic. And so we welcome any questions if you would like to ask them here or want to follow up with us. Our contact information is shown here. So Cindy and Maria, my fine colleagues, are available to answer any questions that you might have, as well as and I also am available. And I think that's it from my end.
So thank you so much, Teresa. We will be opening up the lines if you want to ask a question, but we have one question that was already in the chat room. So let me just pose that to you, and this is for people who are in the RELs, and there was an interest in finding out what tasks do the face-to-face events that you mentioned early on, under what tasks do they fall?
So the 2014 Data Summit was something that sort of was unexpected, and so we didn't have a formal deliverable for that. So we did that under Task 6, but the 2015 one, which we're proposing for in our Year 4 plan, that is under Task 3 as needs as a technical assistance activity.
Great, thanks very much. So I noticed from your presentation that you've certainly reached out to large numbers of district data people, teachers, and researchers. We had a question that was posed during the registration that maybe you could respond to, and that had to do with improving relationships between universities and school systems. It would seem to me that a number of the researchers that you might have had at that conference were from the universities. So do you have any thoughts on how something like that might be improving relationships between researchers at the universities and school system?
You mean the Philadelphia Research Policy and Practice? I think it is a great opportunity for people to talk to each other and to build those networks and relationships. We did have, I should have said more about who those attendees were. It was a lot of universities, some contracting organizations, but we also had local I wouldn't call them advocacy groups, but there are maybe affinity group is the best way to call them. So youth organizations and other groups that work with the school district. You know, with a large district like that, you get a lot of stakeholders involved. And so they also were at that conference, and they really did welcome the opportunity, and were very glad for the opportunity to talk to each other. Implicit in all of that, in all of the discussions, was that Research Alliance notion of practitioners working with researchers and not separately. And so I think that whole concept was permeated that entire discussion. And so, I think the very first Research Policy and Practice Conference, because it was the first of its kind, really was more of a, so what are people doing? So what is going on in the district? We had a big poster fair. I think we had some 70 some odd posters, strewn up in this big atrium. And I think people were surprised at how much, really just how much was going on. We had one representative from PDE, a very senior person there, and he did not realize just how much was going on in Philadelphia. I don't think anybody realizes outside of the Office of Research and Evaluation, who's the nexus for all of the data requests, just how much is going on. But yes, I think it is a great opportunity to cultivate more positive, more collaborative, and richer relationships between researchers and practitioners.
Teresa, if I may add, this is Maria Salinas. I think to add to that, it felt like a really great open house around the topic of research. And within that, I think it felt really good as a starting point for more great collaborations to come. I felt that the whole day was permeated with that excitement, and I thought that was really welcomed by all the different folks who attended and by the district teams as well.
Thank you, Maria. That's very helpful. We have one other question, and that is, in what ways have you involved your Alliance members in these events?
For the in-person events, well, certainly Philadelphia is a member of our Principal Effectiveness and Teacher Evaluation Alliances. That really was more of a district event, and so I think we invited, I think we did let our governing board members know about that and share, shared that information with them. But for that particular event, I did not share that beyond Philadelphia. It was a big conference, and I think we weren't really sure, whether whether it would have been appropriate to invite others. I think for the the upcoming year for the Philadelphia event and for the PDE Data Summit, I think we will be sharing that information with our Research Alliance members and inviting them to attend if they so wish. And actually, I didn't mention it here, but we are planning a cross-Research Alliance conference at the end of June, and so that will be our opportunity to do some cross-pollination. So that's yet another thing that we're doing. But that's within the Research Alliance, not extending the borders.
Extending the borders of each alliance.
Oh, there you go. That's right. That's right.
That's right. Cool.
Positive spin.
There you go. So I don't see any hands raised anymore and no questions forthcoming, so there may be some later on. So at this point, we're going to move on to our next presentation, and that will be by the REL Northeast team. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who will get started, and then Rebby will also be chiming in.
You have been muted.
Peter?
Hey, everybody. Thank you. So
your microphone has been turned on.
Launched a blog last March, and we've had, I think, just checked last week, 1,200 unique page views on the blog since then. So it's definitely become a new and interesting destination on the website. So there's the link to it right there in the chat room. We'd love to see a couple of posts a week by our staff, but right now it's more like 3 or 4 per month. Some recent examples include blogging on the technical assistance we provide to specific districts. We're also blogging on national conferences where we've been talking about our work, like SRE in early September and StatsDC in July. When a new product is published, the PI or the project lead can blog about their approach to the work and who they feel it will be useful for. And I think a blog recently on a new ELL survey for school principals actually drew an inquiry from the state of Connecticut. So we know it's getting read and it's useful. And then another example is when an alliance kicks off a research or a working group, we can sort of show the innards of how that's coming together. And this sort of, the flexibility is great because you're not falling back on traditional dissemination methods to formally tell the story. So a few of the goals for the blog. The first is really to open up a window to the public onto the work that our alliances are supporting and that our project staff are conducting. And the second, as I alluded to, is to provide an opportunity for all our staff to disseminate directly through the website and then very easily by extension through Twitter and other social media. So I think maybe a sort of a less obvious reason for the blog is it redistributes the voice of the dissemination team into the hands of those of us who are doing the work, the project staff. And then a third is that all the staff, when a blog goes up, we all get an alert by email, and we can all see what one or another is working on. So I think as the frequency of posting goes up, it's going to be even more exciting internally as an internal communication strategy at REL. So who's the principal audience? Well, most obviously would be journalists who want to learn more about our work. We know that the blog is very popular for journalists when they come to websites, but also alliance members our governing board members, and of course the broader education community. So just quickly, how does it work? When the blog was launched, we set up everyone on the project with a username and password, so it's very easy to do. You log in, submit your post, the dissemination team receives an alert and reviews the content. So we might touch it up a little, sharpen up the title, and add relevant hyperlinks. A good working rule is that any post should include a link to something that is already approved and published on the website, so it's sort of anchored into a more obvious workflow. Or anchored into an alliance or a work in progress. So then we submit that content to our core, our contracting officer at IES for a final review, and that typically takes about 24 hours. And then the post appears on the website. And then, as I mentioned, we can also retweet on it, and then add the content, repurpose the content for newsletters that we publish. So in addition to increasing the frequency, I think a next new horizon would actually be able to facilitate posting by our alliance members and even by our governing board members, because those, once you've got something on a website and you have a link, you can easily share it, and that's a great way to extend the voice of alliance members beyond the borders of the alliance to their own professional networks. So that's just a real snapshot. We'll look forward to reporting more on the progress of the blog in the future. And of course, we can use website analytics to track which posts are most popular and also how frequently it's getting used. So I know Rebby is next, but MP, back to you, I think, briefly.
Nope, I'm just going to take the controls. Hi, everyone. This is Rebby Carey from REL Northeast and Islands. And for this illustration of work moving beyond the borders of an alliance, I want you all to picture a stone being dropped right in the middle of a lake with all the ripples going out from that entry point, which will lead to some of our activities and challenges later on. So as those of you, as those of us who are doing work in the REL program, and we have a line of work specifically aimed at providing support and assistance to educators to build their capacity to use and interpret data and research. And 85% of our funding is to be spent on direct support to our research alliances. So we, as MP and Teresa talked about, really spent the first chunk of our time focusing in and cultivating these alliances. And we had an idea, when we first started this work, we had some ideas about what the analytic technical assistance work might look like, but it wasn't until we were deep in conversations with our alliance members that we understood some of the real needs that we could meet in our role as the Research Alliance conveners. So in conversations with our alliance members, we figured out some possible issues that we could jump in with. For example, helping our alliance member districts and schools figure out how to effectively use logic models, or how to promote a data culture, or how to support practitioners at the classroom level in building skills to use data to inform their classroom practice. So we developed workshops around each of these topic areas, and they were each for a specific alliance. But as we were developing them and talking about them internally, other alliance facilitators said, hey, our members would be really interested in that. Can we have one of those? So this is the first ring from the stone in the lake, which is an example of work originating from one specific question from one alliance member and spreading out to more of our research alliances. Because we suspected or hoped that this would be the case, we worked hard to create the workshops in such a way that they could be customized with examples that would speak to different audiences. So for example, the Urban School Improvement Alliance was the original requester of some of these workshops, but the Northeast Rural District Research Alliance has really latched onto these workshops, and they have quite different audiences, so we've been able to change the workshops to be applicable to both of those. So as it says on the slide, for each of the workshops, we've also developed some facilitator guides and materials that can be used by other folks besides us. So the original workshops were delivered to specific districts, as I mentioned, that were represented by alliance members. So it was a really targeted one-on-one experience. Most of these were either in person or a combination of a webinar followed by an in-person event. And they were very well received by our alliance members and schools. They were customized. And but as you all well know, doing an on-site workshop necessarily limits the amount of people who can participate. And we were hearing from our alliance members that they wanted to be able to offer the workshops to larger groups. So this brings us to the second ripple, which is offering the workshops as a skill builder series to a wider audience. To anyone who wanted to, in this case, on the slide, learn more about the use of logic models to support program development and evaluation. And these have been offered multiple times over the course of the contract. And we have some data to suggest that people are visiting these archives after the fact. I know Teresa mentioned using the archives as a tool going forward, so we're hoping to do that as well. And when these webinars have been delivered, we've again gotten positive feedback, and we try to customize the content so it's a little bit personalized for a certain population of practitioners, like this one would resonate with practitioners from an urban district. So we provide these as a way to extend the reach of our REL because we just don't have the scale, we don't have the resources, we don't have the person power to be able to deliver on-site workshops throughout our region. And this helped bring them out to a larger audience. But they still require a fair bit of resources and person power to administer, with customizing and inviting and registering participants and scheduling webinars. And as all of you know, it seems like a small task, but it never quite feels like it when you're in the thick of it. So finally, the last ripple, for now, we hope that there are multiple ripples, is coming soon. And we hope answers some of these scale issues. We've created self-paced online courses based on 3 of our popular workshops, where practitioners can work on their own or in groups to take one of these 3 workshops. At the end, they'll be presented with a certificate that acknowledges their completion and resources that they can use to bring others in their schools and districts, bring to others in their schools or districts, and a contact person for questions. So while these courses lack a live facilitator, they allow for folks to get a foundational understanding of these issues at their own pace and on their own schedule. And we're also exploring ways to use this with an on-site facilitator from a school or district who can use this as a resource for PD sessions. So what started out as a very directed one-on-one request for help in one of our research alliances have evolved into a larger set of materials that we can customize or allow people to explore on their own. And we hope to start hearing stories of practitioners and others using the materials out in the world and trying to collect stories of impact from those types of ripples out in the broader universe. So I'm going to turn it over to MP for some questions.
So let me just ask Rebby a question about what she just talked about, because it sounds to me like a lot of what's been going on there has been a repurposing of something that was done originally for one alliance and repurposing it for different purposes. Do you have any sense about the use of any of these resources by parents and other members of community groups? That's a question that came up during our registration period, so I wonder if you have any comment about
that. I haven't heard about parents using the materials. We are offering in December a webinar specifically on the logic models, on the culture of data use workshop that will be customized for school board members. So we are trying to sort of extend the reach beyond district level folks and school level folks, which we think are very important, but we do think some of these materials can also be used for different audiences. So we'll let you know how that one goes, and if you have school boards you want to invite, I'm sure you'll get the invitation from our list, from our mailings.
Thank you, Rebby. Let me turn to a question for Peter. Peter, do you know anything about the characteristics of the users who've actually visited our blog pages?
That's a great question. We don't actually. The analytics, I think, can only track geography. So we'll probably take a look at the geographic distribution. But I think probably the more important answer is that we do not enable comments on our blog. Perhaps for obvious reasons, would add a new level of vetting of content, and we could potentially do that at some point, and then of course you're going to see a lot more based on the comments, who's actually attracted to the blog. But probably another step back from it, it would mirror the makeup of our contact list, which is about 55% LEA and about 12% SEA. So we don't have that information yet, but perhaps someday.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Question back to Rebby. Could you please share what the approval process is that you've been using to get IES approval for the online courses?
Yeah, so we proposed the online courses as a Task 3 public product. So it went through the full peer review process, the full external reviewer process. We got a lot of great feedback from IES on how to improve and refine the courses. So once they are up, once the course materials are up, we will be able to launch the online courses, because they're really, they take the materials that we created for the courses and just put them in an online format. And so that would be under dissemination.
So we had a question from Jared that Teresa answered, and just make sure everybody gets it. So Jared had asked, when can we sign up for future workshops? And for REL Mid-Atlantic, the events are on their website. It's on the chat room, and everybody can see that link. Rebby, do you want to say, or Peter, say how the RELNI workshops are advertised so that people can sign up?
Yeah, certainly.
So,
that's the Rebby, I'll put the specific upcoming events page for bridge events.
So there's a link for REL Northeast and Islands, and all of these workshops are open to anyone who wants to sign up. So.
And certainly the online courses, when they go live, you'll be able to self-register and take them at your own pace. So those will eventually be very prominent on our website.
Great, thank you. Those are all the questions that I have. There's one more question. What learning management system are you using for the online courses, and how were you able to make them 508 compliant? So, Peter, can you answer that? Did we lose Peter?
This might be, I don't know the answer to this. Oh, good.
Yeah, no, the 508 compliance I can answer to. We sort of have redundancy. There will be closed captioning of the video material in Adobe Captivate, as well as a downloadable transcript. So fairly common techniques for the 508 compliance. As for the learning management, I can't speak to that at this time.
Okay, we'll see if we can find an answer to that question and get it out at some point with the archive, maybe. Okay, all right, so we're going to now do a little poll.
You have been muted.
We'd like to find out from you
Your
what
microphone has been turned
you have
on.
already used to reach beyond your alliances, and please check any and all that apply. So newsletter seems to be very popular, one-on-one outreach, conference presentations, sponsoring conferences, bridge events. So I see that others might also be using blogs, tweets. We're getting lots of tweets and blast emails. Great. And those of you who posted under other, would you please write out what those other strategies are in the chat room? That would be great. Thank you. So conference presentations seem to be very popular, bridge events and newsletters and tweets. Great. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to have a moderated discussion now, and we'll be posting some questions for your thinking in just a moment. But while we're waiting for that slide to come up, think about, in your own experiences, what is the tipping point for you in starting broader outreach, going beyond your alliances? What challenges did you face in doing that? And how did you know if the strategies you're using are working? So we're opening the lines, and you can either enter your responses in the chat room, or you can raise your hand, although I lost my screen with the participants, so I can't see who's raising their hands. Do you have it? So think about the tipping point. I know for REL Northeast and Islands, as I was working with the ELL Alliance, tipping point was really when we started having some preliminary findings from a study that we had started in year one, and began to share some of those immediate responses, first with our alliance members. And we consider our alliance members not only those who are in our small core planning group, but we also have a second tier of members. The ELL Alliance has 2 state networks of ELL directors who we see as members of the Alliance. And so we started sharing the preliminary findings with them, as well as some other preliminary work that we were doing, and sharing information that way. So we have a question here about, do you share limited distribution reports with all tiers of the alliances? So who would like to take that question from anyone? Rebby, Teresa, Maria, Cindy, Peter?
I can start. Anne-Marie, I think it's really this is Rebby, on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
We're in pretty close consultation with our core to make sure that, we're meeting the contractual constraints while also keeping our alliance members. We have a core planning group that are pretty much attuned to all the work that's going on all the time. But with the different tiers, we make sure to, sort of figure out why it's important and be in consultation with our core.
Yeah, I agree. We tend to limit it to sort of the core members, and one of our alliances is sort of more broader, with a larger number of members, but varying degrees of commitment. And so we had one limited distribution memo, an annotated bibliography, go out to all of them. But in general, we try to observe the constraints of the limited distribution memo. So.
Yeah, this is Cindy from REL Mid-Atlantic. So the case Teresa said is one of our alliances. The other alliances that we have are quite small, and I think we consider most of them core members. So for them, I think it's a little bit different, and in those cases, I think we have shared and we would share with the entire alliance. But again, I know that some of the other RELs have the core and other members, and I think I would say for 7 out of 8, we really have a core group of alliance members that make up the entire alliance.
Yeah, we had a multi-tier alliance structure, I think, for the first 18 months, and then we realized, it really is the core members that we want to focus on, because they're the ones who really are attending and are committed and participating. So.
So we have an interesting comment here from Anne-Marie Faria. She said, I think it would be great for us as a larger group to brainstorm ways to share information with those in-between groups that are key stakeholders but may not be part of the core planning groups.
We put together these project summary flyers organized by Research Alliance. So it's maybe 1 or 2 sentences for each of our, for different projects and activities to describe what we're doing, so at least people know what kinds of projects we're engaged in. It's certainly not comprehensive, and limited distribution memos are not limited distribution memo work is not included in those flyers, but at least it gives folks a sense of the breadth and variety of the work that we do. So, and just to touch back on that first question, MP, what was the tipping point in starting broader outreach? I think we did, one of the motivations behind the teacher effectiveness webinars, the online webinar series that I talked about before, was to fill in the void, while we were working on projects that had not been publicly released yet, and, it was a way of generating content as well. So showing the region that we were around and we were doing stuff that was interesting to educators, but it also helped fill in the silence until we were able to start getting, the reports publicly released and being able to share those items.
Great. And just another suggestion here that the Northeast Alliances often publish an annual newsletter that's posted on the website, and some of the alliances also have their own sometimes quarterly, bi-monthly newsletters that goes out to a broader audience. And just as you were saying, Teresa, provide short descriptions of projects that are being conducted. So that's one way of doing it. We have 10 minutes left, and so I just wanted to now move on to having Teresa give some thoughts about the strategies that they've used and the challenges around measuring impact. Teresa?
There's nothing particularly innovative of what we're doing here. When I put this slide together, I thought, oh, okay, well, we're boring, but this is what we've been able to think of. Strategy, of course, the SFS surveys, the count. I think also counts of number of attendees for events is a way of measuring impact. And we haven't been doing this as regularly as we should have, but the numbers of visits or downloads of the archived materials on our website. One of the strategies that we talked about in our Year 4 dissemination plan was really thinking about recycling, repackaging, putting together, new ways of combining our
You have been muted.
work. And so, maybe
your microphone has been turned on.
A packet of information that or that we'll push out that's related to alternative measures of student outcomes. And so we've got a webinar on that. We've got a couple of reports and a lit review and a couple of studies. And so, bundling those together and pushing that out. So that's something that we're thinking of doing to try to sort of reuse some of the archived materials that are already out there. And of course, the challenges that we've found, and I don't think this is going to be new to anybody, but the number of attendees and versus the number of registrants for our webinars, is anywhere from 50% and down. And so if we get a couple of hundred, several hundred people registering, we almost always get at most half of them attending. If we break 50%, we are thrilled. But that's always a challenge. And of course, in any event, whether in person or online, the number of people who register versus attend versus who actually fill out those SFS surveys is a decreasing number. So there's challenges in measuring impact, but if you guys have any other ideas, we'd really love to hear them.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm going to move on to Rebby, who will talk a little bit about impact and challenges faced by REL in its moving beyond alliances. Rebby?
I'm just going to be very quick. Oops, did I do that? Oh, sorry. Okay, didn't mean to. I think somebody referred to keeping a blog up to date as feeding the beast. I think that's been one of the challenges of making sure that we have content that is, good enough to merit being published, but also not killing us all, trying to continually keep the information updated. The other piece that is sort of a challenge and an impact, I think, is as we see people using the materials that we are able to post, we'd love to be able to sort of put tracer bugs on these things and follow them out into the field. And we haven't thought of any good ways to be able to do that. We know for a fact, actually that there are some districts that have used the workshop materials in their schools, and we just don't know sort of what has come of it. So we're trying to figure out ways to trace the long-term ripples. If you can go back to that stone idea for a second to see how do we actually keep an eye on that and tell the stories, because these things keep living long after we have stopped charging the bill code for them. So, Peter, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll add 3 quick things. First of all, the last couple challenges around, in our list there, the website technical interface and reframing one's work in newsy terms. Speak directly to the blog, which is that even though it just takes a single click and typing in a user pass, the technical interface of blogging actually is a substantial barrier. So we're trying to find ways to make sure it's even easier. So when a new post goes up, all staff are also going to get a set of instructions so that they don't have to bookmark them or go dig them up, but they can go ahead and blog right from the moment someone else is blogging. So we're hopefully generate some more internal combustion around that. So the technical stuff. But speaking to Teresa and the event numbers, I think only over time will you get some reassurance that yes, if you get 100 registrants, you can be pretty sure you'll get 50 attendees. Mm-hmm. And there's some solace in that. But I really think most RELs at least once or twice a year will team up with another REL. And our example this year was with REL Southwest, where we teamed up to do a bridge event in August, and our Early Childhood Alliance joined 2 of their pre-kindergarten alliances, and we doubled up on the invitation outreach. We also included the IES newsflash process, and so the registration number, I think, almost hit 750, wow, which is far, far beyond what any REL could do on their own. And actually noteworthy on this particular webinar right now, I think it was unusual. We had 45 registrants and almost 42 attendees. So sometimes you can sort of bend the physics on this stuff. So there are possibilities. And then I think I'll leave it at that.
So I've gotten a message here that we are over our allotted time. Thank you all for staying on board. But before you all leave, a couple of things that I just want to mention. We had asked Kevin Smith if he would share some of the ways they've used dissemination beyond an alliance to share and build with additional stakeholders. And you will note that there's a download for that called Improving Literacy in the file share section of your screen. And Kevin has also put in a link to the presentation. So thanks very much, Kevin. We'd also like to remind you, as Teresa very aptly put it, we get attendees. Thank you all very much for staying on. And we get people who actually come to the events, and we would like you to raise our ranking of how many people actually responded to our SFS. So please make sure that you respond to that survey. And thank you all very much again for participating. Just want to let you know that we will have our 3rd and final forum for the year sometime in December, and the topic will be on sustaining our research alliances beyond the life of our RELs, current RELs. So stay tuned for that. You will be getting notices about that event sometime in November. And again, thank you all very much for participating, for your thoughts, and for your work that you all are doing. If you need to reach any of us, you have our names and our email addresses there. And have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, MP. And thank you, everyone. This concludes today's Cross-REL webinar forum. Goodbye.